Gentlemen of extremely distinguished taste, I present to you the Element Optics Nexus Gen2 4-25 by 50 FFP scope. Now this is hands down my favorite piece of glass that I own, and it is just about perfect for you NRL 22 shooters and positional shooters out there, and we'll go into why in a little bit. But first, let me show you the unboxing from the first day I received this scope, and then we'll go a little bit deeper here.
All right, boys, just got the Element Optics Nexus Gen2 4-25 by 50 in MRAD. I am switching over to MRAD, and I'm opening this for the first time with you guys. So it looks like we get a manual, we get the reticle guide, we've got a sunshade in there, nice cover, very cool. And then let's open this up. I'm trying to do this all one-handedly. We'll see what's in there for you guys in this little unboxing. I think that is the occluder ring. I didn't know it came with that. That goes on the objective and allows you to parallax less. That is very cool if that's what that is. What else do we got here? Okay, looks like some O-rings, Allen key, and a little lens cloth. And that's it. And then let me get a hand free and I'll take that scope out. We'll take a look at it. All right, and there it is. You can see it's got the little throw lever installed. It's more of a matte color than some of the other like Helixes and Titans that I have. So that's kind of cool. And I'm excited to test this thing out, man. This is definitely my most high tier piece of glass that I have. So next we'll mount it on a gun and see what it looks like.
All right, now that you know what it comes with, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to get that camera off that stand, and we're going to take a quick look up close at the various features that it has. And then we'll get out there in my laneway and take a look at some different distances with this scope so you guys can judge for yourself how good the optical quality is. And keep in mind, I'll be filming through a side shot scope cam, which you're not going to get the same quality with any scope cam as you would with your naked eye. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Time to get a little up close and personal with this thing. So the first thing you should know about this scope is how insanely good the turrets are on it. If I'm just right at about 0. If I turn this and keep turning it, watch what happens to my little rotation indicator here. Boop, right there. So now it's showing that we are on revolution 2, which is a pretty cool feature so you don't lose track. And then if I put this back down, you can see it just went back in. So that is an amazing feature right there. Additionally, if I unscrew this toolless top cap and I adjust back to 0, the 0 stop in this thing is automatic. So it automatically will set your 0 stop about that far, 0.5 mil or so below where you're zeroed, which is extremely cool. So no more fooling around with, you know, Allen keys to reset that scope. It's going to happen automatically when you reset it. Now on this side, I have removed the windage cover, but very easy to set on that one. You see the knurled cap right here. You just take that off and then you can reset that to 0 like most of the other Element scopes. So that's pretty cool. Nice that they include that cover, which I've taken off right now because I shoot competition and I want to have access to adjusting that. You can run it on or off. All right, we can see the magnification here. It is a 4-25. It does include the throw lever, and the rotation on that is very smooth. Of course, you've got the adjustable eyepiece, and then let's look over here because this is where some of the magic is happening too. This is an illuminated scope, and instead of the typical click wheel that you see for the illumination settings, it's actually a push button, which is pretty cool. Takes a standard CR2032 battery, and under that is, of course, the parallax adjustment. It's super smooth. And this thing will parallax down to 10 meters. So that is really nice if you're somehow shooting very close. But for us competition shooters, we're mostly going to be shooting from like 40 or 50 yards out to 300 or so. And this thing will go to infinity on the parallax wheel there. So I like that. I've found that it's very true for different distances. If something's at 100 yards and you parallax to 100 yards, it's going to be perfectly crisp for you there. I've got the scope mounted on this FX DRS Pro, and I am using the Discovery Opt low mounts. So they're 30mm mounts, and it looks like it's 0.97 of an inch. I'll leave a link for those in the description and comments, because those are very affordable. And since you've spent $2,000 on your scope, you know, if you wanted to spend a little bit less on these precision rings, normally I wouldn't recommend buying cheap rings, but these ones are actually really nice. So I think that's your general overview of the scope. I'll give you a look at the glass. It does include the aperture ring, which I don't have in right now. We'll get into that in a little bit, but just in a general sense, I think that gives you a pretty good up close look at this scope. And if you're spending $2,000 on a scope, you probably are looking for videos like this to just take a real close look at it, because chances are you're buying it offline and you're not ever having it in your hands before you buy it. So with that said, the next logical thing is we'll get out there in the laneway and take a look at some various distances. And please note, it is kind of an overcast day, so not super sunny or anything today, but I think that might lend itself to the side shot scope cam footage that we're going to take. So I will show you that next here, and we'll also do a tracking test at 50 yards.
All right, so the Nexus does play pretty nicely with the side shot scope cam, and of course I'm just filming with my cell phone, but we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. My target stand right there is at 50 yards. All right, so that is full magnification, 25 right there, and we can see nice detail on that target. Now I'll go ahead and turn on the illumination. So just one button press and I have that illumination, and I can cycle through the different power levels on it. So that's kind of cool. I just wanted to show you guys that before we get too deep here. I'm going to hold the button in and that'll turn it off. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some other stuff at various distances, but for 50 yards that is crystal clear. And I'm looking through my scope with my eye, and it is clearer than the footage you're going to get off of the cell phone for sure. Let's do this. We'll take a look out there at the fence line, which is about 120 yards away. So I'm going to parallax to that, and we'll go ahead and zoom in on that and see what kind of detail we get. Yeah, this scope is very nice. I can see the individual nails and stuff sticking out of there. If we look down here, I can see the wood grain. I'm going to take my eye away and look at the side shot, and it actually looks pretty good. It looks like it plays pretty well with the side shot, but we can see really detailed wood grain and, you know, the nails sticking out of that thing and everything. And this glass is just so clear. All right, so we'll zoom back out and we'll go up to my plate there at 150 yards. So I'm going to parallax to that, and we'll go ahead and zoom in the whole range. And that is pretty clear. 150 yards, 4-inch plate. I'll get it out of my reticle so you can see the detail on the plate there. And looking at my side shot, it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. All right, let's do one more distance here. So there's like a sewer duct thingy back there at, I think from where I'm sitting, it's right at about 195 yards. So that's fully zoomed out. Let me parallax to that. Okay, and I'm just going on the parallax wheel to whatever setting it says, and it's always true. And I've noticed that with like all element scopes. So if we zoom in here, we can see a bunch of impacts up there. I mean, those aren't impacts. Those are probably bird poo. Yeah, totally. That's what those are. But we can see all of those in great detail, and that is at like 195 yards. So I think that is extremely good glass to be able to see in such clarity at that distance. And just for grins, let's look up at the sidewall of the highway there. That is, and I'll parallax to that, that is like 650 yards away. And wow, I can see the individual like details on each of those bricks. And it looks like it is coming through kind of decently in the scope cam, but my naked eye is much better. So I also notice on the scope cam, I get aberration, and I'm not seeing that really with my naked eye. So we'll back out here. That is a nice quality piece of glass there to be able to see all of that stuff in such detail. Let's do a little bit of testing with the Aperture Ring. If you guys are unfamiliar with the Aperture Ring, Matt Dubber did about a 12 or so minute video on exactly what that does, and he breaks it down on an Einstein scientific level. So if I remember, I'll hopefully throw the link for that video in the description and comments for you guys to check out, but he explains it really well. But for practical purposes, as an NRL 22 shooter like I am, the main benefit is that you're going to have to parallax less. So what does that mean in competition? If you're switching targets from near to far, you'll have to mess with your parallax less, and you might be able to just set it somewhere in between and have it just be perfectly fine. So right now we're looking at 50, and I do not have the Aperture Ring in, so let's see how it changes it. I'm going to slide this on. Alright, so that's with it on. I'll back out. And I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, so right there, that's with it on. Let's see what happens. Note the background and everything. Let's see what happens when I take it off. Alright, you see how the background became a little bit more fuzzy? Now I'm going to put that back on. And then let's do this. We'll go full zoom, and we'll look at that 120 yard post. So I'll parallax back to that. All right, so I want to get it so that we have, I'll back out a little bit. I'll go to 15 power. So I can easily see with great detail the post there, and also about 35 yards or so back my 150 yard target. Let's see how that looks without the Aperture Ring. All right, hard to tell much difference at that range, but the Aperture Ring will help you to parallax less. It will also allow less light into your scope, so it can sometimes create a little bit of a less bright image on a really sunny day. That'll help you. On a really foggy or rainy or overcast day, it might be a bit of a hindrance. But go and watch Matt Dubber's video on the Aperture Ring. He'll explain it way better than I do, and his footage is really tells the tale much more than mine here will. But with that said, let's get into some tracking. I guess next what I'll do is I'm going to hunker this thing down onto something solid so that we can do a tracking test. And I'm not actually going to shoot this gun because I don't have it tuned and I'm still doing slug selection, but we'll just put this thing down on maybe like the wood deck or something of my shed where it's going to be solid. I'll put a heavy bag on it, and then we'll twist that turret and see if we come back to where we think we should. And in my experience, all Element Optics track superbly. So we'll take a look at that here next. All right, I've got my rifle sitting here on the deck of the shed with a heavy bag on it, and I'm going to try to not wobble it around as I do this tracking test, but you can see, just take note of where my little dot on my reticle is. Not completely in the center of that target, but pretty close. So carefully, without moving the rifle around, I'm going to dial up on my elevation turret until it stops. All right, that's one full revolution. And about 7.5 mils it stops, so I'm going to go back down, trying not to torque the rifle. Now we're back into the first revolution, approaching 0, and should be right there. And wow, that thing tracks perfectly, just like all of the Element Optics scopes. I've done tracking tests on even their lower tier Helix, which I actually used in competition with great effect for quite a while. And these things really track well, and Element kind of prides themselves on the tracking. If you've seen Matt's videos and Element Optics videos out there, they do extensive testing on the tracking. So pretty good, and there you go. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, Kings, let's wrap up with a few final words from my perspective on the Element Optics Nexus Gen2 scope, or as I like to call it, the baby Theos. This is basically
as feature rich as the Theos, but just in a smaller package, and it's $1,000 cheaper. So these retail rated about 2,000. The Theos is about 3,000. The Theos has a 34 millimeter tube. This has a 30 millimeter tube, and this also has the 50 millimeter smaller objective than the Theos. But the turrets and everything are, I think, 1-to-1. It has the revolution indicator on the elevation turret, so you always know what rev you're on. And then where the magic really happens is inside this elevation turret, because number one, both turrets are toolless. I hate having to take Allen keys and mess around like that when I'm out at the range. And when I'm doing a competition, I do not want to be messing around with Allen keys. So toolless top caps, and on the elevation, if I reset my zero, it automatically resets the zero stop. So that is one less layer of additionally messing around with Allen keys. As you've seen, most zero stops have 3 Allen keys and you set them that way. You don't even have to bother with that on this one. Windage, same thing. You've got the toolless cap here and you can just set it back to 0. On the parallax side, I've noticed that the numbers that are printed there for the distances are spot on. So let's say you were using this for example, field target, where you don't get to use a rangefinder, you could easily accurately estimate your distances just by getting that parallax clear and looking at the numbers on there, which is super cash money. And then also the illumination, they did a good job. Having the push button there is a unique way to approach that, and it actually keeps everything a little bit lower profile because you don't have that knob sticking out to, select your illumination settings. So overall, superior quality glass from this thing. Yes, it is a bit pricey at 2,000, but if you're not looking for, to spend 3,000 on that Theos, this is a great option. And you've probably heard the old adage, oh, you should be spending double the cost of your rifle on a scope. Well, this breaks that adage, because that scope is a $2,000 scope sitting on a $3,000 rifle. So it's not even one price of the rifle, but it is way more than enough glass that you would need for any competition. So it definitely has my thumbs up for exactly what it is per the price and all the features that you get. And I hope you guys thought it was pretty helpful to see it at different distances and to get kind of the close-up on it, and then also the tracking test with it. So if you want one of these, I will leave some affiliate links in the description and comments that will help the channel. So bless you if you're using those. But in any case, I hope you guys thought the video was helpful, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.